Jen, switching gears and focusing on a big game in the top four clash in the Premier League. Newcastle United against Manchester United. Nick, Newcastle can overtake Man United with a win. I've done the math. This feels like a huge game for the Magpies. How are you feeling as a Newcastle fan after some big results recently and kind of getting back on track after the disappointment of the League Cup final? Because that was a distraction. That was a huge deal. But now I think we're all in, right, on the Geordies finishing in the top four and getting back to the Champions League for the first time in a long time, because they've regained something, confidence, a little bit of luck, whatever you want to call it. Just feels like they're heading in the right direction under Eddie Howe once again.
Yeah, to quote a man, it's going to happen this week, and I'm going to love it. I'm really, really looking at this game as an opportunity for Newcastle. And the reason is that I think it's a test for Eddie Howe, one we haven't had in quite a while. But if this were two healthy teams, I would tell you I don't like the chances. But we don't know what's going on with Marcus Rashford. Joe, maybe you on shift this morning. I didn't check. Maybe we have an update there. And Casemiro's not playing. And I think that gives a guy like Bruno Guimaraes a real chance to queue up a very informed Alexander Isak. So St. James Park, they feel fine away from home. Eddie Howe has done a good job there. But they just feel like that place has been special and loud this year. The fans don't feel the same way about the takeover that other fans do. They feel emboldened. They feel like they've been lifted to a spot where they're supposed to be. And I think this rivalry is what this rivalry was 20, 30 years ago now. I think it's going to be loud, Joe. And I think the occasion might be just enough. And I don't think we can sleep on how important Casemiro has been to Manchester United this year.
Yeah, some key absentees there for Manchester United. What about Newcastle United, though? And what's key for them down the stretch to try and get over the line here? Because that's going to be a huge focus, isn't it? Amongst all the other things we're focused on in the Premier League. But if Newcastle can get back into the Champions League, despite all of the investment, that is still way ahead of schedule where we thought they would be. So there is going to be a lot of pressure and good pressure, you'd have to say, for players. So maybe they can relish it, because a lot of these players would not have been thinking at the start of the season as well as they were preparing and as well as they finished last season. A lot of them were thinking, maybe Europa League, maybe you got an outside chance of a top 8 finish, but this is doable now. Very, very doable for Newcastle, and it seems like this game against Man United can set the tone for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they need chance creation. Is a very, very simple and obvious answer, but it's been an issue all season. And now Miguel Almiron out for this game and out for a few more weeks, and Alan Saint-Maximin questionable for this one as well. They are such a counterattacking team, and you take those two players out of the side, and I just kind of wonder, where does the danger come from? Where does the goal threat come from? Where do the chances come from? And so if St. Maximin can get back in time for this one, he's had the international break to take a little bit of time and get himself right. They need it feels like they need a statement result or a statement victory, and doing it against United, a team that's currently in the top 4 and sitting in third, I think is an obvious opportunity for that, to show that we're not just in a nice little story, a team punching above its weight. We believe that we actually belong here, similar to what Arsenal have done numerous times this season. They have gone up against bigger sides and put in a top performance and gotten the result that they needed. And we talked a little bit about earlier this season when they played United, that was the first kind of real challenge and opportunity that they would face this season. And they came through that one looking pretty good. And so if Newcastle can do the same here, and obviously a different situation, I will really start to buy into, okay, they are a real threat for the top 4, because to me right now, it just feels like they're there, and they're going to continue to be there, but they're not really going to threaten, I don't think, to overtake either United or Spurs, unless Spurs give it away in very Spurs fashion. So a big performance here against United this weekend. The fact they get it at home is obviously encouraging.
Nick, you mentioned it there for United not having Rashford potentially, obviously suffering those injury issues. We'll wait and see if he's fit enough to start. Casemiro being suspended, I mean, that's going to have a huge impact. So who are you looking for Man United to sort of carry that load? And again, it's a substantial load if we look at the difference between United from the early part of the season and then throughout the last few months, where they've really gone on an upward trajectory. It's Rashford's goals and his unstoppable play cutting in from out wide. it's Casemiro finally, arriving and then finding his feet after a few weeks and just making a huge impact in midfield. So if you take those two guys out, it's a different Man United team, but there's still a few players there that will be tasked with plugging those gaps and are capable. It feels like there's players now every week for Man United who are stepping up, and you're like, oh, he has had a pretty good season, actually. He is actually stepping up again. So whatever Erik ten Hag is doing psychologically in the changing room, these players are ready to fill these voids. But who are we looking at to try and do that for Manchester United?
It's a really good question. You also mentioned those two players you said off the top, Casemiro and Rashford, were the goal scorers in the League Cup final, which was won at Wembley 2-0 over Newcastle. So I think that depending on who starts is obviously the big part, but this is one of those games where it feels like if Anthony doesn't perform, you're going to hear about his price tag, right? This is where Manchester United fans maybe get a little bit ornery if he doesn't, or whether Sancho is ready to do a job here, right? I really think it's going to come down to the midfield, though. I mean, McTominay and Fred, if that's your situation, what do they call it? McFred, I think, when they play together.
Sabitzer.
I love him. I think that would be a brilliant move. I thought he was still dinged up, but you could correct me on that. I thought he had a fitness concern. He would be a brilliant chance there. I just think this is ripe for a team with, you mentioned the missing wide players. What I think is missing is when Joe Linton's out there and with Guimaraes as well as Willock. Willock is a frustrating player, not unlike Aronson with Leeds, but I really think he's got that sort of midfield is probably too much for a Casemiro-less midfield. The chances were there in the League Cup final. I don't know. I just have a feeling. Maybe I'm not justifying it in words, Andy, but I just have a feeling that this is a game for the Magpies.
Andy, prediction time. Who are you going with? Are you agreeing with Nick there and think Newcastle are going to get a big home win?
I don't think they're going to get I think they'll get a point, though. 1-1. They'll do a good job, I think, to frustrate United when United have the ball. I think they're going to have to give up a lot of the ball in this one, especially if St. Maximin's unable to go, and maybe they find a goal on a set piece. But there is value in frustrating a team like United as just part of the progression of a club like Newcastle. And as we've already said, they're so far ahead of schedule that if they are able to even just remain in the top four race until the final day of the season, I think it will have felt like a massive victory. And then you settle for the consolation prize that is probably the Europa League. And I think for them, that's probably exactly where they should be. And that will allow them to not have to skip a step or two in how they go about building the squad and who they bring in the summer.
Nick, what are you going for then, mate?
I'm going to go 2-1 to Newcastle. I think this break came at a time that allows Howe to negotiate what he wants to do against a manager who is probably going to outthink him most days, but doesn't have his two key pieces.
I'm going for a Man United win, 2-1. I think it's going to be really tight, but I can just see this being, again, we mentioned the atmosphere at St. James's, how electric it's going to be. If it's a draw with 20, 30 minutes to go, I think the home fans are urging the team on. And I can just see United with Bruno, if Rashford is available, just kind of catching them out on the counter or some other bit of magic. So, again, that's what I'm saying. But we all got different predictions there. So that shows how fun this game is going to be from a standpoint for the neutral. As Newcastle host Manchester United this weekend, and over on Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com, where they're covered with the How to Watch info, preview, team news, and an analysis and reaction before, during, and after the game as well. Massive one in the top four battle.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.